How's it going, everyone? This week in fantasy, we're going to do a little week 2 preview. We have one of the most exciting and powerful rivalries, one of the most historic rivalries in the league this week. And joining me is one of the parts of the rivalry, my boy Cam Watson, Cam Joke, Bing Bong 2 Electric Boogaloo. He's an old school guy. He's been in the league forever. Cameron, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing pretty good.
He begrudgingly did this video, so I'm loving it because the Ben and Cameron rivalry really, historically, is a really entertaining one, and I think one that everyone in the league looks for because division rivals. So, right? Yeah, of course. Of course your division rivals. Are the Yankees and Red Sox division rivals? Let's get started.
I don't know what you're talking about.
With last week. It's alright. Some people get the baseball references. I know Weston, Kevin the King, maybe even the Sea Goucher. So starting from the back, we have Tradition of Losing, Aaron, and the Fantasy Genius, Benny the King of Funny, no draftsies.
I love Aaron's new name, by the way.
Tradition of Losing.
That's a good one.
It is a good one. I also love both pictures, the Thorin Seal of Approval and Stephen A. Smith, two very...
There's Thorn.
Thorin, yeah.
I didn't realize that. That's even better.
Yeah, it says Seal of Approval, and he's giving a thumbs up. So, the storyline of this game was that Ben's players, it appeared going into Monday night as though Ben was going to lose. Aaron had two of his best players, seemingly, Gurley and Tavon Austin, yet to play on Monday night. He only needed 10 points. He had his best running back and a good receiver, and the Rams shit the bed and got obliterated, and Aaron ended up losing narrowly. So in my eyes, I really think that Ben squeaked by. Almost everyone in the league, I think, would agree that it appeared as though Ben was going to go lose to Aaron, and Aaron's players really shit the bed on him. And the LA Rams, they moved to LA, they kicked things off with a 0-point performance. They're staying in California. I wonder how many scoreless games the Rams are going to have in California this year, because they moved out there, and now they get to play the California teams and not score points.
Totally scoreless.
Totally scoreless. It was 0 to 28.
That's amazing.
This shows were the games, and it was not a good game. The Rams looked very bad. So I think that was the main storyline of this game, and Aaron lost. So Ben lucked out, Aaron lost. This means that the game this week for Ben, I would say, is even bigger because No Fried has a difficult matchup as well, and he can look to take the division lead because Cameron and Ben are 1-1 right now, so whoever wins guaranteed at least a tie. We had your game, Cameron, Bing Bong 2 Electric Boogaloo against No Fried. And this is an extremely close game. Before they even, back in like 2007, when it was just whole numbers and not fractions, there would be ties sometimes. This would have been one of the games that was a tie. So I love to see these really close games.
Did they round up back then?
Yeah, back then it was just round.
Then I would have won
whole number.
just by 1 point.
Or yeah, that's true.
Because I got 0.6.
But remember, it would round the individual player shit off.
That's true.
Hey, watch this. The little dog will steal the bones, and the big dog doesn't understand that he can just take them. Elise and Rhaegar, ladies and gentlemen. Rogue. We need to have an all husky, just puppy video of them running around. That would be amazing. Because we had the Elise.
So destructive.
We had the Elise and Arya video, but. Okay, so Cameron, the story of your game, I would say, was Drew Brees' phenomenal performance despite the loss.
That saved me.
It did save you. He got 31 points for your team, almost a third of your total point output.
After I saw he scored like 31, I almost wasn't even worried about winning. And then I went back and saw that I won by like 0.6 points.
A close one for sure. And really, I think another thing to point out here is Dan Bailey.
Oh.
If you think about this, think about the Dallas Cowboy game last week. If you watched it, the opening drive, Dak Prescott, he's doing very well. It looks as though the Cowboys will get a touchdown, and Cole Beasley drops a touchdown pass. Now Prescott ended up going 6 for 7 on the drive, and they had to kick a field goal. However, this meant that you were going to get more, or excuse me, you were going to receive less fantasy points. If Beasley had caught that, you would have gotten a PAT instead of like a 25-yard field goal, gotten less points and lost.
Yeah.
So Cameron won the game because of Cole Beasley's pan hands.
Love
That is
Cole
really
Beasley.
interesting. I have him, by the way. He's for trade if you want him.
I'll think about it.
So Eddie Lacy, really being Eddie Lacy-ish, I would say, was around 8 points. Not very good. Duke Johnson, I don't know if you followed this, but there was actually some controversy involving Duke Johnson because Ian Coral guy, another Browns running back, got a lot of carries. So that's something you have to worry about. The Browns scored 1 touchdown in their game, and it was scored by a running back that's not your guy. And it's kind of a surprise thing. I think a lot of people thought Duke Johnson would be the main guy, but that's a potential issue for your team for sure.
Hang on to him for another week or two at least.
It seems like historically you've always been conservative with your players early on, and I know a lot of people subscribe to this theory where they draft the guys they like, and then they're going to give it a few weeks to gel. They're not going to panic and do a bunch of trades immediately.
That's the way I've always done it.
I feel like, how do you feel about sticking with your guys versus the people who are always making moves and going for free agents and trades? Can you speak to why you prefer the one style?
I like it better. I don't know. Like, I always lose, so it's probably not the right way of doing it. I figure if you pick the guys you like from the beginning, then you should at least try them out for a couple weeks.
I feel like you have to give your guys at least like 3 weeks to gel, because if you really start,
unless you draft so that like specifically for trades,
right?
Then maybe. But
and you have to keep your eye on things as well. But a lot of people wheel and deal really fast and kind of overplay their hand by panicking. So it's an interesting style clash. Another thing I want to point out about this game is Brandon Cooks got two touchdowns. That's part of the Saints' kind of crapshoot offense. He was the lucky guy who was the beneficiary of these Drew Brees production points. Next week, I really don't expect Cooks to do much, and I think there'll be a flock of people who go towards Cooks. Not necessarily saying he'll flop next week, but don't expect this great production to keep up or for him even to do well next week, I would say. Because the Saints' offense, it's kind of a gamble as to who's going to do well, with the exception of Brees, which is why Brees is so good, because the Saints' offense is so good, and he's always going to be good.
I wasn't sure about him either, so he's getting kind of old. But I decided to go for it.
I've heard a lot of people have been saying that he looks really good. So
glad I did.
Also, Edelman doing reasonably well despite no Tom Brady, I think is a good sign for you. Here we have Harambe's Revenge. Spencer, how do you feel about Harambe's Revenge?
Might be the best name in the league.
Might be the best name in the league, Spencer. I thought Fabiano's Brilliance is one of my personal favorites, with his disgusting picture. And Spencer, really, this was a slaughter. Spencer's team looked extremely good. Alex Smith, very consistent, a guy who's going to go out and do well. Even did very well, not just well this week with 28. D'Angelo Williams, many people were predicting him to be good for the initial weeks because one of Pittsburgh's running backs, Bell, is going to come back very soon. But for these early games, D'Angelo Williams is going to get a lot of touches, and this week he did 29 points. Of course, there's a lot of consistency here in Spencer's lineup with the running backs. And until some of these running backs like LaShawn McCoy that are injury prone get injured, Spencer's looking pretty because he has a plethora of guys he can go to that are going to be consistent every week. And some of these guys are not injury prone. For instance, like D'Angelo Williams is not particularly injury prone, although he has the Bell issue. Johnson is not particularly injury prone. Forte is not particularly injury prone. So Spencer's looking good here with this team. He also had some contributions from his receivers. How do you rate Spencer's team kind of in general? Do you think it's one of the better ones in the league?
I mean, probably, especially if you're going by this week.
And by running back,
I
too.
think it's kind of early to say for sure who has one of the better, who definitely has a better team.
I think if you go by
he's got good running backs.
Yeah, And a lot of people, if you value running backs highly, like many people do, I would say that he's one of the teams with the most depth. Because Weston has running backs too, but I think the quality of Spencer's running backs are better. And as far as Disco Hobbits goes, Andrew Luck did really well. AJ Green went off, but there was nothing really else of note. Here we have the two Kevins.
Kevin v. Kevin.
Kevin v. Kevin, the Kevin Fest.
Battle of Kevins.
Cam Newton did average. His team lost the game. If Cam Newton had gone off, Kevin would have absolutely gone to town. The commish would have rivaled.
We should not call him Kevin for this one.
The commish would have rivaled Spencer for the most points this week if Cam Newton had a better week against Denver.
I mean, 21 points isn't terrible though. Still
That's
solid enough.
Zach Miller did not have a good week at 1.4. One of the interesting things about Clapfor's team is despite Denver's running back tandem weird situation that's been going on up there in the legal state, Anderson really had a good week this week. Kevin, the commission's all the other running back, the Detroit running back, also did well. And he had some consistency on the back end with flex, kicker, defense all contributing over 10. The commish did well this week. I had him rated very low in my power rankings, so scoring 122 the first week is nice. I'm just concerned with the longevity of the Anderson pick. As far as Black Magic goes, there's really not a whole lot going on. I know that Spencer was highly critical of this team, and with Keenan Allen going down, this team is looking very weak.
That Vikings defense, though, 21 points.
The Vikings defense did do very well. They were playing Tennessee, granted, who aren't particularly good. But Black Magic's team, no one putting over 10 points except quarterback and defense. And if we look at bench, there's some prospects, I suppose. Sproles, I guess. If someone gets hurt, Sproles could step up potentially. But James Starks really isn't anyone I ever have any faith in. So Black Magic's, he needs to change his profile picture. I don't know why he hasn't done that yet. But
maybe you need to make a tutorial.
A little tutorial video and just spam link it until okay. Cameron brings up a good point. Weston's team versus Seagouch's team. Now going into Monday night, this looked like two retards fighting each other. I mean, two truly broken
teams. It's always fun though.
No, it's really not that bad. But. So Weston's team, Kirk Cousins. I've been a critic of Kirk Cousins. I don't think Washington is a good team. The Redskins consistently underperform and overpay for free agents. This contributes to their offense being average to below average, and Kirk Cousins threw 2 interceptions and not a single touchdown pass. Really had a shitty week. He's playing Pittsburgh, granted. And then, despite Weston's supposed depth at running back, he has 2 guys that don't break 10. Although he did have Langford on his bench who did break 10, but he didn't start him. Elected to start Eric Decker instead, who did not get 10 but had a touchdown, which is really what you're kind of hoping for with receivers, is the touchdown, of course. Mike Evans had a good week, 100 yards and a touchdown basically. It's Weston relying on an Aggie to get him through, which is interesting, although he won this week. So Antonio Brown really went off and won him this game. Antonio Brown, of course, is Pittsburgh's receiver who is extremely explosive and gets a lot of touchdowns. And he got 24 this week. He had a great week versus a team that's not very good. Weston also had the ever-present average to below average New Orleans Saints running team on his side. Now, I will say that New Orleans used to have an excellent running back, one of Spencer's favorite players, Darren Sproles. Darren Sproles really benefited.
Where's he now?
He's in Philadelphia, I think. And Darren Sproles is someone who benefited from a lot of Drew Brees red zone passes. On the curse of Seagouch, our boy Seagouch, we had another Ben Roethlisberger-led team. Arian Foster getting 10, which is reasonably good. But Thomas Rawls, really disappointing, not showing up. The story on Thomas Rawls is it looked as though he would be the starter, maybe like an 80% chance, and as the season went on, the chances went down. And now he gets kind of what I like to call the sloppy second role of a running back who
Sean Avery role.
he gets a few yards, but not really enough to be worth starting. He's not really the starting guy. So Thomas Rawls,
5.8.
it's a big deal because Seagouch had the Gronkowski down here on his bench. Typical Seagouch, a guy who gets drafted very highly, has a big name. Seagouch loves these players. And Seagouch was relying on his team, or relying on Gronkowski for his team, and Gronkowski's injury.
I will never draft Gronk again. I got him third round one time. And
Third
he was
round
out.
or third overall?
Third, I think, second round.
Like early second
Yeah.
round?
And he was out second week.
For
For
was
like
that
6 weeks.
Okay. So Seagouch's team really relying on Gronkowski, not having Gronkowski, I would say would be the difference here. As whenever you draft a tight end that early, it's really hard to come up with a good backup. You can see Seagouch's backup. Pittsburgh's tight end only had 3. This is a good strategy, I would say. If you have to get a backup tight end, you would maybe want to go for a guy who was on the offense of the team that you have the quarterback of, especially if they were playing a bad team, and then you could hope that they hook up and you kind of double cash in. But as far as other players on Seagouch's team, his Indiana receiver did average to above average, Moncrief. But he lost the game. Randall Cobb, I think, is a player who's really not going to do a lot this year with Jordy Nelson being back. Finally, to round things off, I completely decimated Lily, who had Aaron Rodgers and pretty much nothing else as her tight end, flex, defense, receiver one, pretty much did nothing. And everyone else except for Crowell, who is your biggest nightmare right now. This is the guy who's getting the carries instead of Duke, the guy on the running back on your team. And Aaron Rodgers did well, and that was it. As far as my team goes, Kelvin Benjamin proved that he is back despite his ACL injury last year, which is great for Panther fans. Jordy Nelson snagged a touchdown, which is always good despite the lack of yards. Jarvis Landry looked severely shaky with the Miami offense, which looked bad and hopefully can recover because I kind of like the Miami Dolphins and think they're fun to watch. Ryan Tannehill's my boy. Blair Walsh did well. He's kind of a guy who benefits from an offense who can't necessarily punch it in very much. He kicks a lot of field goals. And Eli Manning, of course, led the Giants to narrow victory versus the Dallas Cowboys.
1 point.
1 point.
It's ridiculous.
Although I would say Prescott looked good. So we'll go back to back with me. Let's see, is there a way to get their pictures on this? No. Okay. So Eli Manning versus Cousins. Kurt gets to play the atrocious Dallas defense. Eli Manning gets to play the atrocious New Orleans defense. I think Dallas's D is worse than New Orleans, particularly their passing defense. And I think that Cousins is worse than Manning, so I'm going to slight edge to Manning. Mark Ingram versus Lamar Miller. Mark Ingram gets to face the Giants, Miller the Chiefs. Miller is a guy who's guaranteed lots of carries. I edge Miller. Hyde versus Langford. Hyde has to play the Carolina defense, which is very strong. He's also on a team that's not great. I edge Langford. Jordy Nelson versus Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown's probably the best receiver in the league. Edge Brown. Landry versus Evans. Evans kind of proved me wrong a bit last week when he did well, but I still question Jameis Winston overall and think that Evans will probably do better than Landry this week because Landry is playing New England. So edge Evans. Martellus Bennett versus Doyle. Doyle's not really a guy with a whole lot of talent, and Martellus Bennett is playing for New England. So it's kind of a crapshoot there with Brady out. I guess I would edge Bennett because Bennett's the better player. Kelvin Benjamin is one of the main weapons for Cam Newton, so I'm going to edge him over Weston's flex, despite the New Orleans play. Blair Walsh is a guy who gets a lot of field goals. I would edge him over Bryant, who plays on an Atlanta offense that did not look very good. The Panthers play San Francisco. They will obliterate them. The Eagles play Chicago.
Such a homer.
And Action Jay Cutler's pretty bad, so I think the Eagles will do well, but not as well as the Panthers. Overall, I think who do you think will win this game, Cameron?
Probably you. I think overall, I think it'd be close.
Yeah.
I think you've got it. Especially if last week was any indication, because I think you would have won pretty handily.
I'm going to give the slight edge to myself, although it's very close. Second game, we have Lilly versus Seagouch. Lilly has Sammy Watkins, a guy I'm not a fan of. And he already locked in his 2 points. He really wanted to show early on that he was worthless. Matt Stafford versus Ben Roethlisberger. I give Stafford the edge, clearly because Tennessee is atrocious. Danny Woodhead is someone who is targeted in his offense with passes. He also plays Jacksonville, who's not very good. But Arian Foster plays New England. I'm going to edge Woodhead there. Thomas Rawls is a disaster. Edge Frank Gore. Dez Bryant. What do you think about Dez Bryant and Prescott? Do you think that last week, if you didn't know, Dez did terrible? He really did not do well at all. Do you think that he'll do better this week, or do you think
I don't think that's a consistent. I don't think that's gonna be a consistent thing. I think Bryant will wake up.
Okay. So he faces Randall Cobb, who's someone I really don't believe in at all. So even though I don't think Dez will do great, I edge Dez there. Demaryius Thomas versus Benjamin from San Diego. Benjamin will get more looks because of Allen's injury, but Thomas is the better player. Edge Thomas. Colby Fleener's a disaster. If Gronk plays, Gronk will obliterate him. Sammy Watkins a joke. Moncrief will beat him. Moncrief got a dirty dozen last week, which is nice. If you don't know, a dirty dozen, other than being slang for the number 12, is a dozen biscuits from Popeyes, a Kes Parmelli classic. Pittsburgh kicker versus Cincy kicker. Houston's defense is pretty good, and Cincinnati's defense is pretty meh, and Pittsburgh's offense is not only good but explosive. Edge Pittsburgh. And as far as defenses go, the Packers will do well against Minnesota. I would edge over to the Packers. Cameron, between Seagouch and Lilly, who do you got?
Nothing against Seagouch. I'm pulling for Lilly though, but if I was putting money on it, probably Seagouch.
Okay, for me,
I think Lilly's team needs a little work. You know.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
She needs to start making some trades.
In my eyes, Dez Bryant's probably not going to have a great week, even though he's playing Washington. Watkins is already. I would say Watkins was going to do terrible even if he played on Sunday, but he's already registered for sure. He's going to contribute nothing. Fleener will probably contribute next to nothing. And I think overall Seagouch's team has the edge this week. Spencer versus your Pops, the commish. And Spencer is already out to a tremendous lead.
He's got a good start.
Yeah. Matt running is his forte. He's already locked in 30. This is almost exactly what you want to see from a running back. Over 100 overall yards with 3 touchdowns. Ideal. Absolutely excellent. So Spencer, D'Angelo Williams, I don't know if Spencer's going to swap him out, but considering McCoy already played and Forset's the other guy, well, let's see, what's his injury news? He didn't practice apparently, but I'm just going to assume he plays. He'll do better than C.J. Anderson, who even though Anderson had a good week, he's not a guy I believe in long term. Jacksonville looked bad last week. I think Cam Newton will obliterate the San Francisco 49ers in their defense. Deshaun Jackson is playing Dallas. I would say that he's going to do very well. He's going to be the beneficiary of Kirk Cousins' passing
the
game.
monster Dallas defense.
When you have Orlando Scandrick as the guy you're relying on, I really don't think that's a good plan for attack. I edge Deshaun Jackson over Matthews. And Matthews had a good week, but I really think Deshaun Jackson is going to run rampant this week.
Yeah.
Used to play Deshaun Jackson. He's an elite deep threat who used to play for the Eagles. He comboed well with Jeremy Maclin. Also, Riley Cooper was thrown in there. You know, a guy who really likes country music.
I said Wigger.
He did.
No, he didn't.
T.Y. Hilton versus Diggs. Diggs did well last week. Stephon Diggs was a guy who I had on my team and ended up cutting because of Tyler Effort's injury. And I edged to Diggs that week against Green Bay. Jordan Reed is a guy who's going to be playing the atrocious Cowboys secondary. I think he's going to do better than Zach Miller, who did extremely poorly last week. There's no way Michael Crabtree is going to break 28 or 30. I don't even think he's going to break 18. Edge Forte for sure, obviously. Matt Crosby, Stills, and Nash is going to do better than Matt Nugent because Matt Nugent's playing a far superior team. The Pittsburgh Steelers, who have a good defense and a good offense. And as far as defenses go for these two teams, Spencer and the Commish, the Niners are playing Carolina, who have a very good offense, and the Dolphins are playing New England, who have a good offense, but I would edge the Dolphins there. I really think Spencer's going to take this game. What do you think?
I'm giving it to my dad, especially with Cam Newton in San Francisco at the helm.
Kevin,
I think 28's a good start, but I mean,
Kevin is already at such a severe disadvantage already, so kind of have to factor that in. Black Magic and Disco. Knock it off. Luck had a good week last week. I think he'll outperform Phillip Rivers. Rivers, of course, did very well, too. Hey! Dougie Martin and John Stewart will both do pretty average. Martin, though, will have a much higher chance of getting a touchdown. Edge Martin. Jeremy Hill will do okay. Giovanni Bernard will do better. Edge Bernard. AJ Green's elite. Edge Green, obviously. Odell Beckham Jr. versus Robinson. Jacksonville looked shaky, so I'm going to edge over to Beckham there, who's very good. Jason Witten versus Barnage, the Cleveland tight end, who did awful. Edge Witten. Alan Hearns is a player of an offense. He's a member of an offense who did not do very well and struggled a lot. I would give the edge to Alshon Jeffrey. As far as kickers go, I would edge Justin Tucker. Oh, I take that back. I'm going to edge the Arizona kicker, although both kickers will do well. And the Texans' defense is far better than the Vikings' defense, and the Vikings have to play Aaron Rodgers, which is pretty much always a bad thing. Who do you think's going to take this one?
I think it's be closer than what NFL's saying, but I think Disco has it.
You think Disco has it?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be pretty close. But
I think Disco has it as well. We're gonna save that one for last.
Okay.
No Fried and Aaron. Aaron, tradition of losing. His quarterback already locked in at 20. That's what you can expect Kaepernick to do. Kaepernick. I'm so stupid.
Kaepernick can do 20.
Kaepernick. Hold on, let me take a knee. Fitzpatrick, the Jets quarterback, is a consistent player who you can always expect to get you 20.
20s.
I don't know.
About what you have to have from a quarterback for it to be okay. So.
I would say that Fitzpatrick is one of the most consistent players in the league, and Aaron already he's off to a good start.
Average.
With consistency. You don't think? How do you rate? Do you think how good is Fitzpatrick in your eyes?
I think he's pretty average. I don't know. I think he's all right. He's consistent, but he's average.
Lavatius,
just above average, maybe.
I would say that Russell Wilson is going to outscore him because he's playing
Yeah.
the Rams.
I'd give it to Wilson.
You had Wilson last year, didn't you?
Yeah, he did okay. He wasn't. I think he'll have a better season this go around. He had a good season last season, just not on a fantasy side of things.
The two running backs that are facing the fantasy teams play each other. The Oakland running back versus the Atlanta Falcons running back. I edge the Oakland back. Ezekiel Elliott versus Gurley. I think that Gurley will do better than he did last week and outperform Elliott. Larry Fitzgerald versus Victor Cruz. Fitzgerald is part of a superior offense and he's the superior player. Edge Fitzgerald. Cooks versus Baldwin. Baldwin's playing the worst team and Cooks will not do as well as he did last week. Edge Baldwin. Greg Olson's probably the best fantasy tight end in the league. Edge Olson. Spencer Ware versus Snead. It's not even close. A player who is guaranteed to receive touches versus a player who quite honestly is part of a crapshoot offense. Edge Ware. One of the most consistent kickers in the league, Gostkowski, will get more points than Graham Gano probably, despite Gano playing the Niners. And I think the Seahawks defense will absolutely have a field day since they're playing the Rams. Edge Seahawks. I would say that Aaron is going to win this game. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd probably give it to Aaron. I don't think it'll be a blowout, but it's gonna be Aaron.
Final game, you versus Benny. One of the oldest rivalries. To start things off, Drew Brees and Matt Ryan. Now I really think that I'm going to go punch for punch with you on this one, okay?
Okay.
So I think that Drew Brees is going to do better than Matt Ryan because Drew Brees is the better player and he's playing the Giants, although I think it really comes down to just the fact that Brees is better and on a better offense that produces more points. Brees is the guy you can count on to score the points. Cameron, what do you think? Who's going to do better?
I'm going to be a little biased this whole time, but yeah.
That's understood.
Brees is going to be better.
Okay. Eddie Lacy and Matthews. I think that Eddie Lacy is someone who consistently underperforms, and I would edge to Matthews.
I'm not totally sure I'm keeping Lacy in. This isn't my final.
Well,
I'm still going through it. I don't know for sure.
Judge your starting lineup as though that's who you're going to start.
Yeah, Matthews probably. Lacy is okay. We'll see. It really depends on the week.
Adrian Peterson, I think, is one of the best players in the league, and he's someone who you really don't have to worry about losing a ton of touches. Versus Duke Johnson, someone who's on the decline. I would edge Adrian Peterson here, Cameron.
I'm going Johnson.
All right.
I don't know. Peterson's getting old.
All right. Sooner be gay than a sooner, I guess. Julio Jones versus DeAndre Hopkins. I'm going to edge Julio Jones. I think he, despite both, it's close. Hey, despite both players being explosive. Despite both players being exclusive, I think Jones will do better this week. Marsh already got 10 points. How do you think? Do you think Cooper will do better than 10?
I don't think. I mean, it might be close, but I don't think so. I think 10's not terrible.
Okay, and then we have Julius Thomas versus Kels. I think that it's about a wash. Who do you think will do better?
I'm going to side with me on that one.
Okay. We have Reddick versus Edelman. Edelman proved that the offense isn't necessarily not working. I'll edge Edelman.
Yeah, I think Edelman's a better player for sure.
Dan Bailey will have a good week this week versus Washington.
Dan Bailey has a good week every week.
Yeah, and Washington's not that good. And then the Patriots and the Cardinals, both teams are kind of playing bad offenses. I'm going to edge Patriots because of how awful Miami's offense looked last week.
Versus Tampa. Yeah, I'm giving Patriots. I think Patriots have a better defense overall too.
Okay, now Cameron, this is a huge rivalry. Who do you think will win?
Thinking I'm gonna beat the auto draft genius.
Oh,
over there.
Wow, the auto draft genius. Okay. I think that your running backs are gonna kill you this week, and I think Ben will barely win.
Not even close.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you like the guest appearances, make sure you tell us, and make sure you leave a comment and tell us what you thought about the episode. Have a nice day.